I have an audience for today's lesson, Super Blonde from our forum, also known as Jonathan. He is a major contributor to our forum and to this course revision that I'm working on right now. He was invited to join me here at Camp Metal Method to take a look at my process for creating these lessons. I'm sure he'll have some very insightful comments. And I appreciate his comments and opinion, but sometimes his helpful comments are difficult for me to process because it makes me work harder. Still, he's quite perceptive and great with all of the geek stuff. Very helpful, and so welcome, Jonathan, to Camp Metal Method. Hard rock and heavy metal are dark and moody, and therefore typically played over minor chord progressions. As I mentioned previously, most songs that I play are based on the natural minor mode. This is my comfort zone. My original music reflects that preference, obviously. I don't even know if I've written a song ever in a major key unless it was for a guitar lesson demonstration. So that's why I view the fretboard from the perspective of natural minor. I explained the fretboard calling the first position of natural minor the first position, but just remember, this is from my point of view, and it technically is correct when referring to natural minor. These modes are typically described as modes of the major scale. So a very good argument could be made for referring to the major position as position 1. And it is pattern 1 when we treat C as the root note. I could explain everything from that perspective. I'm just not comfortable with that simply because that's not how I play guitar. As I'm teaching modal theory, Metal Method students are reviewing my lessons and sharing their thoughts on the guitar forum. Safety Blitz, a forum member, made a very good point on a recent post. He suggested to play one droning note and demonstrate the sound of the different modes over that single sound. That will be exercise 4 in today's lesson. Thanks, Safety Blitz, for that. Now, this should really reinforce what I've taught in the previous lessons. Next week, we'll have the final lesson on modal theory. Exercise 1 is pattern 4 of A natural minor, or pattern 1 of E Phrygian minor. And that's this right here. Although this mode has the same notes as A natural minor, C major, and D Dorian minor, it sounds like E Phrygian minor when played from E to E. And especially when you hear it with an E minor chord. Here's E, 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 E. Here's exercise 1 at 60 beats a minute. As always, if you can play this clean at 120 beats per minute, don't let my designated tempo keep you from doing this. 60 beats per minute is a reasonable tempo for an intermediate guitarist to reach fairly quickly. It's just the beginning. Exercise 2 is similar to exercise 2 in the previous 3 lessons. It's a combination of the 4th diatonic and 4th pentatonic patterns. I prefer to write and play these scales beginning with an ascending pattern, but you should also practice all of these scales, both ascending and descending. Here's exercise 2 at 60 beats per minute. Exercise 3 shows the E Phrygian minor chord progression. I love this one because it starts with an open E chord and moves all the way up the neck in a very linear fashion. So it really shows you how these chords fit together in a linear fashion. And what I like about it is you can start on A minor, and this is the beginning of a natural minor progression, diminished, C minor, E minor, F, G, back to A minor. Or if you want to do C major, just start on the C major, D minor. Now I could do this E minor, but I'll do this because it's easier to play. F, G, A minor, B diminished. So, next week we'll discuss G Mixolydian. This is exercise 3, the E Phrygian minor progression. So I'm teaching 5 modes, but there are 7 notes in the scale. And I refer to 7 modes. What's up with that? The Locrian mode begins with the diminished chord. It is not a common chord progression, so I'm not interested in teaching you something that you may never use. The last remaining mode is Lydian major and would begin on F, also a chord progression that I don't use and I assume you won't either. Another way of looking at this is I'm teaching the 5 modes that begin with notes from the pentatonic scale. Those 2 additional notes, we are not playing modes based on those notes. You know why? And Jonathan Superblonde told me this earlier. They don't rock. They're also somewhat dissonant. By that I mean, if you're not paying attention to the half steps and you sustain one, it might not sound as if you're in the right key. So, exercise 4 is a droning A note. As I discussed earlier, and I owe this one to Safety Blitz from the forum, I'll use this simple composition to demonstrate the 4 modes that we've covered so far. I'll begin with A major over the A drone note. So you learned C major in this position. I will move it back 3 frets to transpose it to A. Same pattern, everything's the same, except now we have an A root note. Okay, so here's where people get confused. They often think because A natural minor and C major have the same notes that you'd like play the C major pattern and it's A natural minor. No. When you move this pattern back and put A in the root note position, it's now A major. A major. Pay attention to the half steps. I'll do this with D Dorian minor, and you learned D Dorian minor here. Move it back to put A in the root note. So when you hear the droning A note, you will notice that this sounds minor. Sound is established through the half steps. I love the Phrygian minor sound. The pattern that we learned this week begins on the 12th fret. Drop it back to put A in the root note position. Listen to the half steps. That's where you'll hear the Phrygian. You can almost see the snake being charmed out of the basket. Okay, now we're to A natural minor, the first mode that you learned in this series, and I mentioned my favorite. Don't have to transpose this or drop it. We're already there. That F is the natural minor sound. Because the B is shared with Dorian minor. So it's not unique. All right, that is the end of this demonstration and the end of this lesson. I will see you next week for, I believe it's the Mixolydian mode. See you then.